Tuesday, November 6th, 2018, and this is the Go Vote edition. So, let's take a look at some issues, a handful, that have to do with elections today. And from Breitbart, we have the article entitled Voter Suppression, Disabled Vet Busts MSNBC Blocking a Handicap Spot at Polling Place. Take a look at this. Clearly marked, no ambiguity, and here we have, the reporter ready for her close-up. MSNBC is accused of voter suppression by a disabled Air Force veteran who says the far-left cable channel blocked a handicap parking spot at a Houston polling site. The veteran, James Barry, who suffers from MS, made his complaints public via a Facebook post that went viral last week. His story opened with, quote, different kind of voter suppression, close quote, including a photo of an MSNBC crew that had their people and equipment splayed all over the clearly marked handicap space. Quote, the only van accessible spot, and they're filming in it. We asked them to move, pointed out how it was wrong, then went to vote because it takes time to load up, close quote, he wrote. So in other words, he's, being reasonable about it in an unreasonable situation. However, he said that when he came out of the polling place and they were still there, not even packing up, still getting ready for their shot. The crew only moved after someone who was with him made a big scene and did not back down. They claimed they had a live shot, so Sarah walked into the shot. They cut the feed and got annoyed. Not the word that's in the... Never mind. Other people saw what was going on and joined in, including firefighters. We finally left once their van was loaded, but there were plenty of witnesses and pictures and video taken by others. Barry adds, this is suppression. If I couldn't park, I couldn't vote. Their van had no handicap placards. And this happens all the time. Handicap spots are not loading zones for gear and equipment. After the story went viral, MSNBC's Maria Atencio tweeted out an apology. We made the wrong call today by using a disabled parking spot for our live shot in Texas. There's no excuse. I apologize, she wrote. After the story got some attention, in a separate Facebook post, Barry said he would love to sit with Maria Atencio and discuss the issue. Not to bring shame, demand an apology, or anything like that. To bring awareness. Cheers to you, James Barry. Good on you. A balanced, reasonable approach. All right, up next. In the Federalist Papers, a reporter caught trashing black Republican, quote, a bad word, if he wins. And the story is by Henry Rogers. A reporter for a Michigan newspaper called Michigan Senate Republican candidate John James' campaign looking for an interview and thought she hung up the phone before leaving a voicemail that said, "Very bad word, John James." That would, another bad word. Brenda Battle, a reporter for Huron Daily Tribune, left the voicemail on James's campaign office's phone at 3:40 p.m., requesting an interview for last Wednesday, tomorrow, the day after the November 6 midterm elections. In the voicemail, she expresses her interest in interviewing James, believes she hung up the phone, and then goes on to curse about a possible James victory, saying she didn't think it could happen. And the graphic is just great. 2016, if you criticize the president, you're a racist. 2017, I hate the president, and anybody who disagrees with me is a racist. And the story goes on. There's some interesting memes. What can we say? But this last meme is very interesting. 3 men in 3 different positions. A police officer, a defense attorney, presumably, and a defendant in cuffs. In America, color doesn't define your future, your choices do. Very true. I will leave the link. You can read the rest of the article in the show notes. And now we turn. Wait a minute. Where's my other story? I lost a story. I lost a good story, folks. I'm sorry. I'll just tell you. Wait a minute. Do I have it? Yes. Hang on. Let me get it off. See, I want you to understand, even though this is a recording, stuff happens. So let's go to this last election story. And I'm not even going to cut out all this stuff. Last election story. The crowd at Trump rally sings Amazing Grace after a woman collapses. Contrast the last 2 stories with this one. Okay, so the story reads, a crowd at President Donald Trump's rally in Missouri on Monday began singing Amazing Grace after a woman collapsed and needed medical attention. Trump paused his rally for roughly 5 minutes after asking the audience to say a prayer as emergency responders made their way to the woman. Quote, "Is there a doctor in the house, please? Doctor, please? Thank you." Close quote, the president said while pointing to the woman in the crowd, according to The Hill. As the woman received medical treatment, the crowds of thousands broke out into song, which we just heard. Quote, "That was beautiful," Trump said after resuming his spot behind the podium. "Hopefully she'll be okay," close quote. Amazing Grace has been recorded more than 6,600 times according to reports. And then, the article goes on. And so I will leave that. Well, the link is already in the show notes, thankfully. So let's move on. Our next story, as I get back to wherever it was I thought I was going. This is from USA Today, and we want to take you on a little trip with them to see the entire spans of the border. So let's go. Strap in, put your seatbelt on, stuff in the overhead. Cocktails will not be served, but if you're already drinking coffee, you're good. Let's go.
Everybody has seatbelt on, doors shut, latch. Okay, we're clear across the runway. Coming off the Gulf of Mexico right now, moving into the mouth of the Rio Grande River, starting a 2,000-mile expedition or journey along the U.S.-Mexico border through Texas, then on to New Mexico, Arizona, coming out of San Diego, California. Our mission is to survey and inspect the border fencing and the border security systems all along the way. What all would be involved with trying to build what President Trump has called a big, beautiful wall.
Along much of the border as we were flying along, I didn't know where the border was, especially in Texas, because there is no fence, there's no barrier. The only thing we had to guide us, basically, was inside the helicopter. We had a software system hooked up to our video camera, so I could look at the video screen and it showed a red line delineating where the border is based on GPS markings. The border in Texas follows the Rio Grande, the entire length of the state. It's over 1,200 miles. It's more than half of the entire U.S.-Mexico border.
My assignment was to drive the whole extent of the U.S.-Mexico border. We started in the Gulf of Mexico. From there, we just headed west. There's some places where you can just walk right up to the river, and there's places where you don't even know where the international border is.
As you fly up this river and you look out over it, the sheer length of it just seems overwhelming. Right now we've got a whole flock of birds taking off on the ground. Looks like vultures. So we are descending now onto what almost certainly is the first sign of a border fence.
There's 650 miles or so of fencing, the whole 2,000-mile border. 300 miles are vehicle barrier. They're not designed to stop human traffic. But what you have is a border that's 2,000 miles long with roughly 350 miles of pedestrian fencing. The rest of it's open, more or less. There's a distinction that's kind of getting lost in the political debate about this whole thing, and that is people are now referring to the fence that exists as a wall, and it's not a wall. The wall that the president has called for is 20 feet at least, and more likely 30 feet tall. The existing fencing at the very highest is 18 feet, much of it's 15 feet, and there's only 300 miles of that.
For me, something that I think surprises a lot of people is that the border, you think of it as this dangerous, dark place that, kind of feels sketchy or that you're afraid to be in. But Most of these places are just regular small towns, cities, and if there wasn't 15, 18 feet fence next to them, you wouldn't know that you're in the border.
One of the things that was really driven home by this trip was just the immense distances we're talking about, but also the incredible topography. The landscape challenges that exist to building any kind of barrier along much of the border.
This is the Big Bend National Park. It is the largest protected area of Chihuahuan Desert in the country. It's got 118 miles of border with Mexico, and if you're looking out the windows of this chopper right now, you can see just sheer cliffs. It looks like over 1,000 feet easily. Some have suggested the border wall might be built in a place like this. It seems unrealistic because of the topography and the sheer distances. You're looking for scores of miles without seeing anything really.
We're now in the Barry Goldwater Air Force Range. It's a kind of a roller coaster of craggy mountains. The border runs right through them, and we fly up and over them. It's a really parched and desolate desert with fierce heat, little shade, no water. It's maybe one of the most treacherous places to try to enter the United States. Those illegal crossers who choose this kind of route must hike for days to reach roads or some way to get into the United States further. Many of them try, and each year, many of them die.
At the end of our trip, we try to find the site where the prototype border walls were going to be built. It's in an area outside of San Diego. We had a map, and we took a dirt road. We were stopped by Border Patrol. We told them what we were doing. They said we couldn't be there because it's private property, so we had to turn away. And that was the end of our trip.
This is the end of the line. We've been going for 10 days, 1,989 miles or so, 4 states, dozens and dozens of towns. We've covered 653 miles of existing fence. We've seen so far 0 suspected illegal immigrants or smugglers crossing the border, and we've seen 0 people being apprehended by the Border Patrol during this trip. We're now coming up to the Pacific Ocean. Here, a fence goes out to sea, but obviously can't ride the surf, so after it gets out of the way, it stops. Now, the question remains, will a wall get built? Where will a wall get built? What kind of wall will get built? How much it will cost? And what collateral impacts there may be? All those questions remain unanswered. It will be up to Congress, the President, and the American people to decide exactly how all this plays out.
So we have seen various parts of the border wall. Some of it is a bollard fence. Some of it is what they call Normandy barriers, those X-shaped steel barriers that only stop vehicles but don't stop people. We've seen post and beam out in Arizona. And we've seen nothing but barbed wire cow fencing in some spots. We've seen where the mesh wall, which is a variation on the bollard wall, you have standing posts and then mesh grid. We've seen where that's been cut through and repaired whenever there's a hole cut in it. So let's move on to our migrant updates. Migrant Caravan just got some news that could be deadly, and this is from the Federalist Papers, published yesterday by Carmine Sabia. Migrant caravans heading towards the United States just got some scary news, and it could be deadly. And we've kind of reported on this in the last few days leading up to the election. The armed bands of civilian militia are headed towards the border, and they do not have the same restraints on them as the troops do. It could be a frightening situation that no one wants to see. The Huffington Post reported that as many as 200 irregular armed militia members are currently operating on the southwest border. This is not including veterans on patrol, I don't think. The U.S. Border Patrol late last month warned landowners in Texas to expect a possible armed civilians to come onto their property because of the caravan, the Associated Press reported. Militia groups, heavily armed organizations that train members in paramilitary techniques, are often right-wing extremist organizations. The Southern Poverty Law Center identified 689 active anti-government extremist groups in 2017. Of those, 273 were militias. One militia group, the Texas Minutemen, has 100 volunteers heading to the Rio Grande to block migrants now traveling through Mexico. Leader Shannon McGauley told the Washington Post. The untrained volunteers plan to, here's a major contradiction. Heavily armed organizations that train members in paramilitary techniques in the above paragraph. Picking up where we left off, the untrained volunteers plan to dig in along border spots with camouflage clothing, flak jackets, semi-automatic weapons, night vision goggles, and aerial drones, with thermal-seeking equipment to locate people in the darkness, McGauley said. They'll also come with camping gear and food supplies. Militia leaders echo Trump's pre-election anti-migrant hyperbole that the migrants are, quote, invaders, close quote, and that the borders must be protected. Photos and videos of the caravan show large numbers of mothers and children. Large numbers compared to the whole, or that's a very misleading, as we've documented, that is extremely misleading, because we have seen young military-age men in the majority, and we've documented that several times from several different sources. Excuse me. We, quote, we believe our nation is under attack by foreigners who refuse to accept the rule of law on to become a citizen of the United States. Howie Morgan, the political action director of Minutemen Project Militia, told Newsweek. He said he hoped to see thousands of civilians join troops to defend the border. The Minuteman Project, in conjunction with Texas Minutemen, issued an urgent call to action last week on its website, urging members to set up camp along the border for 90 days. The organizations are calling out to everyone to converge on the U.S.-Mexican border immediately to support the U.S. law enforcement and military organizations already there. Your presence is needed everywhere along the 2,000-mile border from San Diego, California to Brownsville, Texas, the website says. The Minutemen Project website warns of a large number of criminals crossing the border, also encourages people to establish their own armed groups. Several U.S. law enforcement officers and civilians have been murdered by international bandits in these areas, the website declares. The group calls on volunteers to follow the law and confer with law enforcement before taking any action. We want survivors, not casualties, so proceed with extreme caution. It also urges members to use extreme caution when confronted by mainstream media. They are not your friends. They work for their globalist open border money sponsors, says the site. The Patriots of the Constitution Militia will put out a call last month for a full deployment to make a stand to secure our border from a mob of migrating immigrants, the Albuquerque Journal reported. And I'll leave you the rest of the article in the show notes. So, where are they? Migrants straggle into Mexico City, shelter at the stadium, and this is by Sonia Perez D., Mark Stevenson, and Maria Verza, via Associated Press, and it was published this morning, November 6, 2018. And here they are. Let's review. There's their shelter where they stayed. I am familiar with shelter situations, and this is much more crowded than you would see in a normal homeless shelter. These people are literally on top of each other. And in a normal homeless shelter where you might not have bunks, which would separate people by, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, whatever, these people are literally right on top of each other with one central aisle. So there's, looks like they're 3 deep on this side, and it looks the same on this side with one central aisle. You are literally walking on top of each other. This is a very very sad situation. And the caption reads, Central American migrants, part of a caravan hoping to reach the U.S., get settled in a shelter at the Jesus Martinez Stadium in Mexico City Monday, November 5th, 2018. Thousands of Central American migrants have arrived at the stadium, still hundreds of miles away from their goal of reaching the U.S. a day before midterm elections, which they unwittingly became a central issue. And the photos were AP photo pool Marco Ugarte, again, embedded with the march, apparently. Mexico City, thousands of Central Americans dreaming of getting into the United States streamed into Mexico's capital and bedded down in a sports stadium on the eve of the U.S. midterm elections, in which President Donald Trump has made the migrant caravan a central issue. Authorities counted more than 2,000 migrants entering the Jesus Martinez Stadium in mid-afternoon Monday, and a steady flow continued into the night. So if you got 2,000 there by Monday afternoon, it'll be interesting to see what their final count is, if they can even make one. The facility has a capacity of holding 6,000, officials said, and 4 big tents. set up for sleeping filled up. So that means that the stragglers were in the bleachers or along the, if there's a concourse, behind the seats, as there are in American stadiums, they were sleeping on the concrete on the concourse, presumably on a relatively clean floor, but with all those people filling in, who knows. Still hundreds of miles away from the U.S. border, early arrivals eagerly sifted through donated clothes, gave themselves sponge baths, and ate chicken and rice. They then picked up thin mattresses to hunker down for the night. Much in demand were blankets to ward off the chill in a city more than 7,300 feet, or 2,240 meters above sea level. A big change after trudging 3 weeks in tropical heat. Nachili Ramirez, ombudsman for the local Human Rights Commission, said the city was preparing to accommodate as many as 5,000 people. The lead caravan is estimated to have 4,000 participants, and several smaller groups are trailing hundreds of miles to the south. Quote, "We have the space in terms of humanitarian help," close quote, Ramirez said. Many of the migrants sought treatment for blistered, aching feet, illnesses, and other maladies. "Since we got here, we have not stopped," said Tania Escobar, a nurse with Mexico City's public health department, at the treatment tent. Melvin Figueroa, a 32-year-old from a place in Honduras I'm not even going to try, was with his pregnant wife and 2 children, 6 and 8. He took the 6-year-old girl to the tent because her eyes were irritated and she throws up everything she eats. More migrants were trudging along the highway between the city of Pueblo and the capital. That would be, well, we'll see it on a map. And trying to hitch rides from passing vehicles. Trump has seized on the caravan and portrayed it as a major threat, even though such caravans have happened regularly over the years and largely passed unnoticed. He ordered thousands of troops to the U.S.-Mexican border, where the migrants were still hundreds of miles to the south, threatened to detain asylum seekers in tent cities, and has insinuated without proof that there are criminals or even terrorists in the group. And I'll leave you the rest in the show notes. I'm really surprised at Fox, although I shouldn't be, because I've been hearing rumblings throughout the spaces and places where we either source information or post information, that Fox is going soft on things and not as quote-unquote conservative in their reporting and op-ed pieces. So that last statement doesn't surprise me. So where are they? Okay. We are in Mexico City. We already know that. Let's pull our map up, and we're only going to deal with the first caravan, which is the focus. They left Cordoba. Clearly they got rides. For this many people to end up in Mexico City over this distance from here to here, when we looked at the distances from Sayula to Cordoba, which is where we thought they would end up, This distance is, yesterday one report said 178 miles, so we'll go with that. So from Cordoba to Mexico City is at least that far, if not farther. Pueblo City down here is where I thought some of them might end up, either as a way station or as a stopping point before hitting Mexico City, or even as a decision point should they decide to go up and around Mexico City. But as you can see, as I've been pointing out for 2 weeks, Mexico City is full of resources, and it's being headed by that official from the Human Services Department in Mexico City, and clearly it's being funded by Mexico City directly, but one wonders and one keeps asking, who's actually behind it, and most people are pointing squarely at Soros, as we reported yesterday. And finally, from our good buddy Zero, who went to the rally in Georgia on Friday, this is what it looked like when he was outside awaiting Air Force One landing. Sorry about that, folks. I had to cut the volume on Z's broadcast because he or somebody in the crowd was playing music that, as quick as you can say copyright infringement, would get me a strike on some platforms, and so I cannot leave the volume up. However, in a few minutes, Z will come and do some commentary. It'll be a black screen, and it'll be him talking, telling you about his experience with the crowd in Macon County, Georgia. Now, I happen to have been to Macon County, Georgia once, and let me tell you, it is a very, very conservative county, and so it does not surprise me at all to see people out on the tarmac, not the whole crowd, but some of the huge contingent of the crowd who packed that airplane hangar at the airport for the rally over the weekend in Macon County, Georgia. Z and his girlfriend Meg went, and as he will tell you, Meg was inside filming and Z was outside. There's another clip, and I'm prevailing on Z's kindness to show you this, but there's another clip that he has posted on Periscope that shows Air Force One coming in for a landing, and he describes the people as you're looking at these cloudy skies. He describes the people watching and talking and having just a really good time with each other, and then all of a sudden he said he saw he said he saw Secret Service helicopters, around the airport in the air. 3 or 4 of them, I think he said. And then all of a sudden, he said he saw lights flash, and then Air Force One drops out of the clouds, just like magically appears. So apparently the all clear to land was given. And as you see Air Force One taxiing, it looks like the wings are going to clip the heads of the people. But I assure you, in this other shot, it shows that there is a fair distance between Air Force One and these people who have come out to greet the president. I don't know if Z caught the doors coming open and President Trump stepping out, which I'm sure, excited the crowd hugely. But in this clip, that is not what we see. And so in a minute or two, maybe 30 seconds, the volume's going to come up because it's hard to hear him talking over the black screen. So wait for that.
This thing. 70,000 people signed up on the internet. At least 50,000 showed up. It was nuts. It was in the hangar all the way across the freaking tarmac of people. Just a sea of people. So when Trump says the fake news won't show it, he absolutely means the fake news won't show it, because I was outside with everybody. And it was not. It was like a giant party. It really was. Really was, man. It was awesome. There were little kids there. There were toddlers walking around. It was crazy. It was off the hook. It was off the hook. It was an awesome time. Met a lot of cool old veterans. Met a lot of cool patriots. Met tons and tons of people. One fella did have a heart attack there. Sad. Prayers to his family. I hope the guy was okay. He was brought out on a stretcher. But it was an amazing time. Amazing time. But I just wanted to show you guys that one little video. I want to keep this up for the people in Macon, Georgia, and all the Georgians that want a copy of it, so I want to keep the scope short. I just wanted to show you guys exactly how big the crowd was, because it was absolutely off the hook. Meg was inside, I was outside, so we got some really good footage. I have some more footage I'll upload later to YouTube and stuff like that, but I just wanted to share this part of the landing, because absolutely was a sea of people outside, man. It was absolutely crazy. But anyway, I want everybody to have a blessed night. I'm really tired. It was a really long day. I might tweet a little bit, but I just want to show you guys all this. And God bless everybody. I will be on tomorrow. It was an awesome time. I met some awesome people. So,
thank you very much, Zero. That's our friend Zero, Hour 1. And he goes on in the morning. He usually comes on, he broadcasts via Periscope. He does have a YouTube channel. But he usually broadcasts in the morning, and he runs into Lee Stranahan. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, he sometimes runs into the broadcast time of Roy Potter. So some of my mornings are nothing but conflict in terms of keeping up with my sources. All right, so now let's go back to the desk. Back on the desk. And this is our November 6, 2018 Go Vote Election Edition. It is pouring rain here, but that's not going to stop me, and I hope it doesn't stop you. So, yesterday, just as a little postscript, we had a surprise. So let's find out what that is. Yes, folks, this is channel analytics from YouTube. And as you can see, number 9 and number 10 snuck in without us seeing sometime in the last, 36 hours. So cheers to you, YouTube users and subscribers, number 9 and number 10, whoever you may be. We thank you very much. We really appreciate your support. Please don't forget to like, share, comment. Don't be mean. Don't fight with each other in the comments. It's not acceptable. All right, let's move on. We have a couple more things to wrap up and on our Go Vote edition of this broadcast. Mumble It, as I have said, is picking up steam. Yesterday, the nag screen that was up on Halieus Media came down. We added our favorite t-shirt in the Halieus Media very small line of Halieus Media gear. We know there's not a crashing demand for it, but if you want it, great. I will say one thing. When you look at it on a small screen, it looks like there's nothing there, especially on a light or white t-shirt. If you want to know what the logo looks like, either zoom in, because it's the line drawing. It's not a big, heavy, in-your-face logo. It's very subtle. But the baseball shirt has and it's the only one, long sleeve baseball shirt or 3/4 sleeve. I don't have the picture in front of me. It's the only one that has two logos, one on the front pocket, small, and one on the back in the upper third of the back area across your wings, basically, your shoulder blades. There's also a replica of our sticky notes, although the actual product is, a sticky note pad or a post-it note pad. It's not, it's not exactly our sticky notes, but it's so close. Our infamous sticky notes that came in handy today, because I forgot a programming feature, which was to put the tab up there. What's wrong with me? I'll tell you what's wrong with me. I've been up since 4. It's now 8:36. Yes, it really takes that long to do a half hour or 45 minutes, especially at the end. So if you like our work, please like, share, comment on all of the platforms you find Halieus Media publishing on. BitChute, halieusmedia.com, YouTube, Mumblet, Twitter. Oh, I know I'm forgetting one, and whoever I'm forgetting, the handful of followers, I'm sorry. But I have to get my butt in gear. My phone broke over the weekend, not like totally non-functional, but it is almost out of space on both the internal hard drive of the phone and the card, the insert card, as well as the screen broke. So I'm going to scour Amazon and see if I can find a replacement that's, not a brand new latest model, because that's just not in the budget. That's what I'm going to be doing today after I go vote. For me and the Shepherd, we hope you have a blessed day. We hope you go out and have breakfast with your friends and chat about politics. We hope you think about the two Americas you saw in the first clip. The America who doesn't care if they're setting up a shot or parking in a handicap shot. The America who pokes fun at a veteran's injuries for the sake of comedy, versus the America that spontaneously breaks out in one of the most famous hymns as a choral prayer for one person who fell out during a political rally, and the president who graciously got her help and then quietly nodded as our fellow Americans blessed her with a prayer. Until we see you again, have a great day and go vote.